Hi, this is Anthony T. Ferrante, director of the Sharknado quadrilogy, including Sharknado: The Fourth Awakens, airing Sci-Fi on Sunday night. And you're listening to Without Your Head.
We got Simon Hunter here, director of Mutant Chronicles. Welcome to Without Your Head.
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good indeed.
You like the accent.
God, I know. It doesn't quite go with the movie.
Let everybody know that Mutant Chronicles opens April 24th in theaters and on video on demand March 27th, which is actually tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
And you can check out the Mutant Chronicles at mutantchroniclesthemovie.com. Now, I actually read that you've been working on the movie for 3 years. What about the movie? Did you feel so strongly about that? You've worked so long on it.
It was 3 years. It feels like 10 years, actually. I think it's one of those things. It was really the process that to make it took 3 years. So we had to kind of do it for 3 years. And in a funny way, I'm not sure films benefit sometimes for working on them for an awful long period of time, because you kind of want to try and keep as fresh opinion of it as you can. But 3 years, we made a little mood film to show people what we were going to kind of do, this independent sci-fi movie, and kind of were they interested in doing it. And we shot that over a few days, and we did our kind of post-production on that over like 2 or 3 months. We did that all ourselves, as a kind of no budget kind of little test thing. Mm-hmm. And then when we made the film itself, we pretty much got the money there and then, and we made the film the following summer. And then we went into post-production for about 2 years on that. The whole film was pretty much green screen from start to finish. So we kind of locked ourselves away in a dark room for 2 years, finishing off the film. So it all adds up, really. And then you think, oh my God, I was like about 12 when I started this film. So.
Right. What's it like to, start from like a 7-minute short film and then to finally see the full-length feature finished? It was an amazing journey, really. I mean, I have to say, I really had fun doing the 7-minute film. I mean, I'd been doing commercials for the few years beforehand, and the 7-minute film, it was really, as for those of you who go and make your own films, it was as close to that as possible. It was like being a kid again, effectively, because we did it all ourselves. We shot ourselves. We set up some computers in my garage and kind of did it that way. It was a really hands-on basement filmmaking, and it was really fun. And then the film becomes a much bigger process, and it becomes a much bigger beast. And you look back on it and you think, it was an amazing achievement to get from 7 minutes all the way through to 99. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with the Mutant Chronicles, like the game, before you were involved with the movie?
No, I wasn't. No, I looked at it the moment I came along, and it was, I think, very much my approach was that the original Mutant movie that was talked about for years and years and years would be very much, probably more a faithful adaptation, I think, for the fans than we did, because it was going to be a pretty much a tentpole movie and quite a large scale thing, and of that ilk, and I think that you could have incorporated a lot more of the world into it. But actually, realistically, by doing this kind of independent approach that I wanted to do, I knew that we wouldn't be able to, tick all the boxes possibly of what people wanted. But what we could try and do was give people at least a little flavour of the world, and again, I didn't want to try and tread ground that I thought had been already tread by, much bigger movies. I thought it'd be more interesting to go with a more extreme style, something much more interesting to look at that really hadn't been done before. So we sort of decided to go on a kind of steampunk look and feel to the movie, which I think, made it distinctive. Otherwise, I think you'd have just had a fairly, bland looking, movie that you'd probably seen before and done better on a bigger budget.
Yeah.
But this was I felt if we went for something extreme and kind of impressionistic and unusual, then I think it would at least be giving people something new and fresh to look at.
Yeah, I love the look of everything. Did it come out looking on the screen like you imagined it?
Well, oh gosh, it's always. There's not many directors, I suppose, you'd ever interview and they'd say, they wouldn't want to go back on
right. on certain things. I mean, you have to be responsible. You're doing an independent film here. It's not a, there's going to be sections where you're going to be looking at it and going, God, I wish we could go back and redo that, and you just can't. You just have to kind of lie to yourself and live with it and go, oh, it's good enough. Let's move on. You've got to kind of get the whole film up to a certain standard rather than just fall in love with certain bits to get them fantastic. So there's definitely I suppose if you were being candid, you would say I would love to have done some huge mutant army, crossing the world kind of shots and things like that. But that was not this movie. It would have probably been out of place. This was a much more hands-on kind of scissors and sellotape and nuts and bolts kind of feel. I mean, I wanted that kind of approach. It was nice. It felt right. But yeah, I'd like some huge armies of mutants crossing the world and fighting and all sorts of things,
right,
just to give the film a little bit more kind of epic feel to it.
Yeah. For the fans of the game, I guess there's no Nephirites in the movie.
There's no what, sorry?
Nephirites. That's actually the real big monster in the board game. I used to play it when I was a kid.
Yeah. No, there's not. And we did look at that. There was the Resides and there's all sorts of stuff. And it was just, it wasn't, we didn't want to do it. We did want to do it. But I think if we'd done it, I just think by the nature by doing an independent movie like this, we just couldn't get there and do those sort of things. And if we'd done them, they would have looked truly terrible, and I think really offended people. It's better not to do it than do something badly. Mm-hmm. And I think we were right to do that, and that's why we wanted to make the mutants effectively humans, prosthetic humans, rather than kind of 3D creatures, because I think that they would, again, I also think they look more disturbing and more like, real people who've been changed and, necromutated and everything. So no, we didn't go down doing we didn't end up doing big creatures and things.
Yeah. It's got a great cast. You got Ron Perlman and Thomas Jane, John Malkovich. Were you happy with the cast?
It was probably somebody else. It was probably the greatest. Pretty much, I think it was the best thing about the film. Actually, I really, really liked the cast. I got on really well. I mean, you were daunted first day when all these people came along that have such good history and pedigrees of movies. I remember when Ron first came on set, I was slightly intimidated, and such a big person to meet who'd done so much and you admired, and they were just great. They worked hard. They're so professional. They were so enthusiastic. You couldn't fault them. I think they made it was the most pleasurable part of filming. I think I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now you talked about most of the stuff was in front of a blue screen, green screen. Is that hard to direct actors in front of a screen and tell them what they're seeing?
Yes, I mean it is hardened, but you need to kind of know how the world is going to look, and and what what you're going to put in there, and how that will relate to them. If you're doing spaceships, you've got to figure out how they're going to, how will they react to that? Is the spaceship making a loud noise? You need to do, so they can suddenly, if there's a spaceship flying overhead, then you can make sure you cue in the wind machine at a certain point so that they suddenly start flapping, and it feels like they're really there. And then, you just do little nuances, like they put their hands to their ears because it's so loud and in the middle of a performance. It looks kind of very weird on set, but when you come to the final thing and you put in the sound of the spaceships, it just takes it up a level of believability that they're really there. And you need to do that all the way through, every day, and as many things like that as you can. Just them interacting and being observant of their environment, which they're in, and how they would react to that. Mm-hmm. Just covering up your hands because you've got, you're going to put in lots of wind and things, blowing through the scene and mist or whatever. So you kind of just want the feeling that they can't really see, and you just do little nuances like that all the way through. There are 100 little things that you do, and it just adds up to make it just a little bit more believable that they're there.
Mm-hmm. Is there any political messages in the movie?
I think we were concerned with the whole 4 corporations running the world. We felt that the world was going more and more corporate, and the world in the future has possibly been just run by corporations, and the country, the nation state, had disappeared, and so people were more observant to these huge, large companies than they were to the nation state. And
and what would happen if how base this life would become if that happened. So we do touch on that. I do try and get that out in a few places if we can.
Is that one thing, since it was over 3 years, that maybe like your political views might change and you might want to, or the political structure of the world changes and maybe want to add something different like throughout the time?
I think it's an interesting question, actually, and it's not true in this case, but it is. I think it's true, and that's a very interesting point. I mean, not just political, but just your views on everything. That when you're working on something for 3 years, even just your aesthetics might change. You're always forming opinions on everything. So how you felt at the beginning to the end is completely different. I had a fairly constant political view about the world. Really, generally, I'm fairly pragmatic about things and try and. The way I look at things, but I think we kept that fairly stable, and I hope you get the sense of corporations being when they replace the countries you live in, it's not a pleasant place to be.
Right.
We touch on that, but again, I'm doing a mission movie, a fun movie that's where people are. Heading into the center of the earth to destroy a big machine that makes mutants. So I've got to focus on that. That's my key thing.
Yeah, because necro-mutants just on the earth, that's not good either.
Mutants are running around killing everybody. That's poor.
Exactly.
That's poor. We don't like that.
How would you say like the zombies and mutants in this movie would differ from like another movie?
Because they're people-based, I think, on this. They're and traditional zombies are as well, but I think in this that we have a very thought-through structure on them. Effectively, what happens is if a soldier, say, is on the battlefield and they get shot or they get knifed or whatever happens to them, they suddenly get dragged away by mutants. They get taken down into the machine, and whichever wound or cut or whatever has happened to them, that they get that wound repaired with because of huge nasty metal staples, and they get their body repaired, and then they get injected with a sort of necromechana kind of mutant fluid that actually reanimates them and brings them back to life. And their arm is kind of sewn off, and a bone, sort of all that's left of their bone is all that remains, and they use that as a weapon. So they're kind of like warriors. Where I departed from the Mutant Chronicles world is I was a little bit worried about doing them effectively all clad up in armor and guns and things. I just felt that we'd seen that so often that we needed to try a fresh approach.
Yeah, the look of the film looks almost like a futuristic World War II.
Yes, or even World War One. Even, I mean, we kind of went for a steampunk world. It was almost like 200 years in the future, all the natural resources would be completely gone, and or in terms of things like nuclear and everything else. And actually, the only thing the world would have really is coal. Because no one had been using it because it was a kind of dirty fossil fuel that we didn't really want, and so it was the only thing left. And that's kind of what everybody uses, even the spaceships. We have the spaceships. We have loads of people stacking the boilers to get the spaceship in the air, which I kind of think is fun. I mean, some people look at it and they'll go, "Oh, that's ridiculous. How would a steam-powered spaceship fly in the air?" And you know what? They're right. But I kind of think it's a more fun, slightly Jules Verne kind of approach that I think you have to have that kind of sense of fun going into these kind of movies. Certainly this movie, I think, and then you'll enjoy it. And if it bothers you, things like that, if it's science fact that you want, then I think with a coal-powered spaceship, you're going to be disappointed.
Exactly. Did the actors have to have any special training for the sword fights?
We did put them through a few weeks of sword play, and yeah, we did actually. They all came along, and we did quite a lot of sword play with them, and they were really cool about that. They were kind of doing bone blade versus sword action. You can see that there's on the DVD that will come out in a couple of months' time. There's quite a full length documentary about how we made the film, and there's quite a large section on that, and you can see them all at work.
Yeah, and you check that out at Mutant Chronicles, themovie.com. It's coming out at theaters April 24th and on video demand March 27th. Was there anything you'd like to tell everybody out there why you think they would enjoy the movie?
Well, I think A few reasons. One, I think it's an independent movie that's made by a lot of film fans, putting in a lot of hard work and making a science fiction movie that they think is going to be a cool and entertaining, piece of work. I think that we went for a very extreme style, which I think is very interesting to look at. It's one of those things that you'll kind of love or hate, but it is interesting and it does stand out. So I think the world creation, that kind of steampunk, coal-powered future, is fun to look at. I think the other thing is we just went for a fun movie that we were, it's got its smile moments. You don't take it too seriously. It's a good way to pass, an hour and a half. I mean, that was, I didn't want to be too pretentious making this movie, that we were trying to create the next, Alien or something. It was designed for a fun, a fun night out at the cinema or watch it on demand, which is actually you can do it tomorrow. And you get some beers in and you have a good laugh. There's a lot of mutant heads comes off, and it's fairly hardcore as well. Actually, it's there's quite a lot of violence in it, but in a fun mutant kind of way. There's lots of bone blading through heads and all sorts of nasty stuff. Right. But that's the kind of movie that we set out to make. And I mean, if that appeals, then I think you'll have a really good time. And I think if you really want serious science fiction, then I think that as I say, then you'll probably be disappointed. But I think it's a good way to pass an hour and a half, and you should check it out. And there's a new cut of the movie. I've done a director's cut of the movie, which I think you should have a look at. It's really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Adam Green, the director of Hatchet, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com.